and welcome to Cincinnati Matters. I'm Regina Russo. This morning we're talking with a member of the Autism Society of Greater Cincinnati about this issue of this developmental disorder that affects 1 in 150 children affected with autism. Ken Jones is with the Autism Society of Greater Cincinnati, and Carrie Schuetz is a behavioral specialist who deals with autistic children. And thank you both for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Staggering numbers, 150, 1 in 150. We were talking before the show started, and I was saying how it seems that of late we're getting more awareness about autism, but it's kind of shocking when you know that there were so many families out there who were suffering for so long. Your son is 5 years old.
Yep.
How did you know that your son was autistic?
Well, we actually found out through a relative. Cameron was 18 months old, and we had just come back from a vacation at the beach, and my wife got a call from my cousin's wife right after the trip and said, "I'm worried about Cameron." And we were a little concerned maybe about his speaking at the time, but not overly concerned. Most people said he's a boy. They take longer to talk, things like that. And my cousin's wife is a special ed teacher, and she noticed that Cameron wasn't making eye contact, not responding to his name like he should, and it was very difficult for her to call my wife and actually tell her I'm worried about Cameron, and thank goodness she did, because that really got us started into early intervention and things that he needed.
Did you know anything about autism before?
I knew almost nothing.
Really?
I mean, most people you ask them about autism, they say Rain Man first, and then maybe they know somebody with it. So more and more, unfortunately, people are meeting people who are families who are affected by autism.
What was the first wave of emotion that you were hit with when they said autism?
Yeah, it's kind of a shock, and actually it's still going on. Autism is definitely a journey or a marathon. It's not like a sprint where you can just go for a couple of years. And initially, when we found out, you go into problem-solving mode. You do research, and you get on the internet, and you find out very quickly that there's not a lot of answers out there. You go to pediatricians don't have a prescription for you. They don't have, where you normally used to go to your doctor and get an answer. There aren't any out there. So you're left somewhat to your own devices to figure out where do I go next. And it was a good friend of ours that referred us to the Autism Society. And that's how I actually got connected. And my wife and I had coffee with one of the outreach coordinators from Kelly O'Leary, and she just laid out all the options for us. And it was amazing to be able to talk through the different options, the different therapies, the different resources that are in a community. And having that was a godsend. That's really what helped us to kind of go down the path for us. So.
Well, tell us what is autism, Carrie, and tell us about some of the children that you kind of help.
Sure. Autism is a neurobiological disorder. It is also called a pervasive developmental disorder, which means that it begins in the early stages of life. Autism usually starts before the age of 3. Autism has different characteristics. Some of them include impairments in social interaction. They include impairments in communication. They include a need for repetitive and sameness. So some of the children that I work with, some of them can talk, some of them that can't talk. The ones who cannot talk, we give them communication devices. They can be sign language, that can be text, which is called the Picture Exchange Communication System. Some of them use like the Dynavox and other communication devices. Autism is also known as a spectrum disorder. So what a lot of people say in the community is once you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism.
Right. Because there's varying degrees of it.
Exactly. So there's also autism, and then one of the groups in autism is Asperger's. And they have a little bit of different characteristics, but they're still considered on the autism spectrum disorder. They're just so cute and so much fun. You have fun every day that I work with them. Those are some of the main ones. We always work on all those goals. We work on communication goals. We work on goals to improve their social interaction, and we want to decrease some of the inappropriate behaviors that we sometimes see.
When we come back, we'll have more with Carrie Schuetz and Ken Jones as we learn more about autism in the greater Cincinnati area. Welcome back to Cincinnati Matters. I'm Regina Russo. This morning we're talking about autism, and joining me is Kim Jones with the Autism Society of Greater Cincinnati, and Carrie Schuetz, who is a behavioral specialist and also works with the Autism Society of Greater Cincinnati. Does a lot of outreach and support with that organization. And Kim, we were talking earlier, your son was diagnosed at the age of 2 with autism, and we were kind of talking about how mysterious this disorder is, and it can affect one child, as you were talking about, Carrie, in one way, where they can just be a little distant and withdrawn, and another child could have an explosive personality and an inability to communicate and get along at all in this world. So when you started to find out what autism was, how scary was that for you?
Well, it was completely frightening because there was many more questions than there were answers for. And the choices, again, there's so many different choices available to parents that you're trying to navigate through. There are therapies that range from swimming with dolphins, and there's a lot of vitamin therapies and chelation therapies and behavioral strategies, and figuring all that out is daunting when you've never had to take such control over your child before. You know, my son he's got an amazing ability to memorize letters and words and numbers. That's the thing, you know, I remember when he was a little after 2, he'd say the alphabet backwards and things like that. I mean, just their brains are always working, and it's amazing.
So at that point, you're saying, my son's a genius.
Yeah, exactly. He's a genius, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Look at him.
But he couldn't speak, you know, but he couldn't speak. So a lot of Cameron's therapy is around verbal behavior and teaching him to speak and teaching him to request and teaching him to hopefully someday express what he's feeling. And that's the challenge. If you can imagine not being able to communicate and having the world happen to you, that does lead to the behavioral outbreaks and all the other things that happen.
And how frustrating that must be for a child wanting to communicate and bond and connect and not being able to do that. Can you kind of shed a little bit of light on this disorder, how it's diagnosed, what are the symptoms, and what causes it?
Yeah, right now there is actually no scientific evidence on what the causes are. Some people think that it could be the MMR, the measles, mumps, and rubella. There are a couple other ideas that people have. It is definitely genetics. I think they have just found a chromosome or one of the genes that could be linked to autism, but that is ongoing. So it is still, that in itself makes it confusing, because it's like, why?
And there's a lot of controversy in the community surrounding that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So I think right now what we have to do is we have to look at what can we do for these children, since we don't know quite yet what the causes are.
One of